Hi, this is Stephen. This is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology. And today is July 14th, 2019. This is episode 10. We'll be getting into a number of things that we usually get into. For example, we'll quickly look at the void of course moon calendar for this upcoming work week. We'll look at some charts of gold, US dollar, and Bitcoin. And then sort of at the last moment, I had an interest to look at the banking history of JP Morgan. And we'll look at what I think could be its, sort of its birth chart and the astrology of JP Morgan. So what's the void of course moon situation look like this week? And what is the void of course moon? Well, quickly, it is when the moon transitions from one astrological sign to another, and that takes place every 2.5 days. And sometimes this transition can take place very quickly, and you hardly notice it, maybe 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes. And then sometimes, without going into detail, it can take a whole day, if not more than 24 hours. And we have one of those situations coming up this week. And why is this important? Well, the void of course moon, when it's a lengthy one, lasting several hours or longer, typically what people notice, if they're somewhat aware, is that there is a shift in mood, a shift in psychology that takes place. And the key words that I use that describe this shift are there's a sense of disengagement and kind of shifting into neutral. And that's not too bad. That's well and good. But what happens when everybody is shifting into neutral and sensing some disengagement is that not much gets accomplished and things go awry. Now, a void of course moon period is great if you can take the day off, if you can rest, if you can play, kind of regroup, or even if you're doing something that's purely sort of a creative activity, then you can produce something. But on the whole, it's more difficult to get things accomplished. And traditionally in astrology, it's not a great time to make big decisions, to have important business meetings, to buy that house, to buy that car, to initiate significant transitions or phases in your life. And here, that's sort of represented by don't get married during a void of course moon. Don't spend a lot of money. Reschedule that important meeting. Excuse me. And so when are the VC moon periods, void of course moon periods this week? We have one on Tuesday, July 16th. It starts at 2:38. And it happens to take place when we have a full moon. So it starts 2:38 in the afternoon on a full moon. And this is a fairly significant full moon. It could be kind of intense. Emotions might run high. Things may seem more crisis-like than usual. So it's something to note on your calendar. And then even more, possibly more, the more important date this week is Thursday, July 18th, because we have a void of course moon that lasts all day and almost into the next day from 8:53 a.m. on Thursday to 2:19 p.m. on Friday. This is an extraordinarily long void of course moon. So mark your calendar, maybe just don't take my word for it. See how it goes. If you have like a very important business meeting, I would think about rescheduling it, or consider your options here. But you can do maintenance work, kind of secondary, items on your to-do list that seem like they're a little bit more secondary to your business, and so you can get things done. But just mark your calendar, see how it goes, see what you think. All these times are in Pacific Daylight Time, so you're going to have to convert if you live on the East Coast. So let's look at we have some astrology to look at here. And we're at what I think are kind of important turning points. And I'm doing this podcast Sunday evening, and I think tomorrow is going to be a fairly revealing day about the future of a number of markets, whether it's the indexes or gold, the dollar, Bitcoin, and so forth. Now, this is a chart of gold. I'm using GLD. The green lines are just traditional trend lines. The blue lines are support and resistance. That all these I've drawn in. And going back, some time now, all these vertical lines have to do with the astrology of gold. And we have a fairly important one happening Sunday evening. Now, sometimes it's difficult to tell exactly what's going to happen. And I use sort of an orb, a 2-day window for these lines, particularly if they don't happen too often. Like I'm looking at this one right here. It bumped up against a clear resistance level, and then boom, okay? Well, we have a pretty important one here. The overbought, oversold indicators, RSI, have come down quite a bit. Looking at the weekly chart, I know that we are quite overbought. However, there's a lot of intermarket effects with gold. We're going to look at the dollar in just a second. So we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. And I think tomorrow is going to tell us more about which direction gold is going to go in. It was just up a couple dollars before I started doing this podcast. So it remains to be seen. But I'm playing this by ear. I have some gold investments, but I think this is a long term where we broke out very significantly above this level right here. And even though there are, commitment of traders reports, COT reports that are telling us that maybe we're due for a pullback, I think this breakout was so major that we may get a pullback, but just down to this level right here. Okay? And then we'll be bouncing higher. That's sort of my guess. This is not trading advice. This is just based on my research and how I see astrology assisting us in analyzing markets. So, US dollar. The US dollar has a timing date, this vertical line happening as well today, okay? It looks like it had a failed breakout here just a few days ago. It popped above this trend line, and then now it's failing. And usually when you have a failed breakout like this is, then the movement in the other direction is fairly strong. And so even though it's resting on what I see, this blue line, what I see is some support, my guess is that if we drop below that support, we're heading lower, and that will have an effect on gold inversely. Okay? Plus, we have all this, Fed talk and Trump and everything wanting the dollar lower and being accommodative and so forth. And so just on a fundamental level, it looks like the dollar could be going lower. But we're dealing with markets that are very manipulated, and sometimes that manipulation overrides the fundamentals and overrides even, the indicators that I'm using here. Bitcoin. Boy, the Bitcoin market, even in the alt market, has had a tough week or so. It's not unusual to come back and test a preceding breakout level, which Bitcoin is doing right now, right at about 10,000. So this red candlestick, right when I'm doing this podcast, is actually touching this green line right here. And that's not unusual. However, we do have an astrology key timing date occurring, just like in gold, just like in the US dollar. It's occurring today. And I think we have to give it one more day to tell us if this is a bottom and this is a bounce, or really what's going on. So It's important to not only use the, just focus on, for myself, focus on the astrology that I've tested for years, but to combine these timing dates with traditional technical analysis. And that's what I try to do. So tomorrow's an important day. That was the main point in looking at all these charts. So let's get into something. I was going to look at Jeffrey Epstein's chart, and then that just started to feel very clickbaity or something. And, I don't think I could have revealed much more in his astrology chart than has been revealed in the news that's coming out. I looked at his chart. I won't go into it, but it's all there. Then I started thinking about this, this may seem very indirect, and it is, but I remembered this article about this very large drug bust of over $1 billion worth of cocaine, being found on this ship about a month ago. And it's maybe the largest or the second largest bust in U.S. history. And then, sort of on a way down in the articles, it noted that this very modern shipping container boat ship was owned by J.P. Morgan. And I have no idea if the two are really connected or not. I just, that kind of stood out for me a little bit. And then because I did this, my last podcast was on Deutsche Bank, and we looked at its founding chart, which I thought was very, very interesting. I said, what the heck, I'm going to do some research on J.P. Morgan, which is a little bit more difficult because J.P. Morgan has gone through has had many different predecessor companies in its history. But I found the sort of the most interesting historical account of J.P. Morgan was on their website, and they go back to 1779 and the chartering, I guess that's what it's called, the chartering of the Manhattan Company as their beginning. Okay, and the Manhattan Company was the water company for New York. And then one of its founders, Aaron Burr, the guy who shot Alexander Hamilton, he wanted to enable and get a charter for the Manhattan Company so that it could buy and sell stock with its excess capital. And I'm not going to go into the whole history of this, but that also created a rift between Burr and Alexander Hamilton. Well, anyway, they did get the charter, and they started their founding date. They started trading on September 24th, 10 a.m., 1799. And what struck me first, and so this is the chart, like as I do usually, this is that chart of that beginning date of the earliest, let's say, predecessor of J.P. Morgan Chase. And what struck me immediately, and I thought was very odd, was that it has a Sun-Mars conjunction, just like Deutsche Bank. So this organization also is much higher up on the risk-taking scale than, just some conservative bank might be. It has some other interesting things. So Sun conjunct Mars. It has what's called a grand trine between Pluto. Here you see Pluto at 1 degree Pisces. And you see Venus at 1 degree Scorpio. And you see Jupiter at 0 degrees Cancer, creating a big triangle. Those three elements are in harmony and flowing together. And all three of them, their symbols could very much be associated with a large banking institution, okay? In a very positive way, actually. And then some coincidences started. Not only did we have this Sun-Mars conjunction, just like Deutsche Bank, but in this initial chart, kind of the birth chart of JP Morgan, it's hard to see, but we have Neptune right on the ascendant, because I know the starting time was 10 a.m. And this is a perfect symbol for a water company, actually. Neptune is related to water. And it's when you have a planet on the ascendant, it's very strong. But it's also related to things like gold and oil, pharmaceuticals, but also drugs, illegal drugs. And again, I'm just throwing this out. This is just a coincidence, because that's how my research started, from this news report of this drug bust. And here we have Neptune very strong. I'm not, accusing them of anything, but it's just an interesting occurrence or synchronicity. Well, just from looking at their natal chart, I wanted to see what's going on now. And right at this minute, they don't have a lot of acute, stress in their, in their organization, as does Deutsche Bank. However, they do have some very challenging things coming up over the next several years. And we'll have to see if it unfolds and transpires like I would guess. But let's just go over that. So let's look at the transits. So we're still kind of looking at Manhattan Bank, but I probably could have put in JP Morgan Chase right here. And these are the transits that are occurring over the next 4.5 years. And some of them resemble Deutsche Bank. The one that resembles it the most is that as we get closer to 2024, we have Neptune opposite the Sun. Here's Neptune, 2024. It is opposite, essentially, Deutsche Bank Sun, if we can use this, chart of their beginning. So this is very much similar. It's an opposition, but it's very much similar to what Deutsche Bank is going through right now. In addition, we have Pluto opposite the Moon. And this can manifest in different ways. However, normally it's stressful. Normally it is stressful, okay? And can sort of undermine the stability of an entity or organization. And then we have some Saturn oppositions finally. We have Saturn down here, and it would fairly quickly start opposing all these elements that basically Deutsche Bank has in this area that can create loss and legal difficulties, major just disruptions and limitations are imposed on them in some fashion. So that's about it. Nothing is taking place right now with Deutsche Bank, I don't think, but things are on the horizon, let's put it that way. And some of them closely resemble what's going on with Deutsche Bank. So that's it for today. My name is Stephen again. I have a master's degree in psychology, art background. From my early formative years, I've been studying astrology, and I've had an interest in applying it to the financial markets for quite a while now, 25 years. I do lean in the direction of hard money, gold, and cryptocurrencies. And if you like this video, then give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing, and I do accept Bitcoin. So that's it for this week. If you have any comments, if you have any specific things you would like me to look at in the area of politics or finance, public figures, leave a comment. But that's it for now. Bye.